What's up?
This is Functionally Literate.
We like to think so.
I'm Ryan.
And I'm Zach.
And this week, we are resuming Morte d'Arthur, Book 2, which is the story of Balin, the knight with two swords. This episode is going to conclude the story of Balin.
It is the epic finale.
It is, man, it's been a crazy story. It really has. Like, seriously, if you're just tuning in, pause it. Go back. I'll wait. All right, you listen? Cool, thanks. Great. So where'd we leave off?
Let's see. We left off with the second knight has just been slain by our invisible rider,
Sir Garland.
And the Balin and the maiden have taken refuge in a castle where they demanded a blood tribute.
The people of the castle, yeah.
To which they acquiesced. To no
work.
avail.
Yeah,
the lady of the castle was not healed.
Uh-uh.
They were treated kindly and then the next day departed.
That's right. So, chapter 14. How Balin met with that knight named Garland at a feast, and there he slew him to have his blood to heal therewith the son of his host. So, I know you guys must have just been waiting to hear how this goes. So I'm sure you're thrilled to know that Garland's gonna die this chapter.
Oh, it's so good. It's so not just Garland either. So many people.
So Sir Balin and the damsel, they ride on for 3 or 4 days without much incident.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was pretty easy going. And then they lodged at an inn owned by a gentleman that is described as rich and well at ease.
Good for him.
Yeah. And so, that night, while they're eating dinner, a man nearby is loudly complaining. And Sir Balin asks him what he's complaining about. And this guy's like, "Forsooth, I will tell you." So, for context, I looked this up. Forsooth is archaic for indeed, but used in an ironic context. So this guy, he was just griping. He didn't really expect anyone to actually ask him what he was complaining about.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, so he's like, "Forsooth, I will tell you. I was at a joust for a while, and there I jousted with a knight that is the brother of King Pelham, and twice I smote him down, and then he promised to quit me on my best friend. And so my son grieves, and will not be whole till I have that knight's blood. But he was invisible the entire time. I do not know his name. So, and then he promised to quit me on my best friend. I assume that means kill my best friend?
I don't actually know. The wording there is a little complicated for me. I'm not sure exactly what he's trying to say.
Well, Garland did something to his best friend.
Yeah.
Who might be his son, might not be, I don't know. But his son is wounded by whatever Garland did.
Yes.
And he needs Garland's blood to be healed. I don't know if that's literally, or it's like, I need to get revenge so my son can have closure.
It's at least played out in the story as literal.
Okay.
They literally need Garland's blood to fix whatever ailment this guy's son has.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting, but it doesn't make sense. Well, anyway.
Well, that's because it's a metaphor. It is a metaphor for the thing that has injured you is often the thing that helps that injury.
All right. Right. Well, anyway, so he's like, yeah, I mean, this guy was invisible. I don't know who he was. And Balin's like, I do. I know that knight.
I know exactly who that is.
His name is Garland. He killed 2 knights of mine in the same manner. I would rather meet with that knight than have all the gold in the realm for the wrong he has done me. That's
He's
saying
very
something.
upset.
That's saying something.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of gold in Rome.
Yeah. A lot of gold.
There's
in
12 statues made of the shit.
I feel like that was like...
I mean, they were plated with it.
I feel like that was magic gold that Merlin made. I don't think...
It just means more gold.
I feel like that gold didn't exist before.
Right, but it got added.
Now it does.
Now it does. It's added gold.
So, the man says to Balin in response. Well, I shall tell you, King Pelham of Listenes? I don't know how this is pronounced. Listeneise. I'm going to go with Listenes.
Yeah, your guess is as good as mine.
I'm going to go with Listenes. King Pelham of Listenes has announced that there shall be a great feast within 20 days, and no knight may go there unless he brings his wife with him, or his paramour, that's archaic for lover, or his paramour, and that night, your enemy and mine, he will be there. So, there's going to be a feast. All knights are welcome that have a significant other.
No single dudes.
No single dudes
this
allowed.
Is not a bachelor party. This is for us family fellas only.
So then Balin says, then I promise you some of his blood to heal your son too. So the guy who's griping, he's like, then we shall go tomorrow morning. And so Balin, the damsel, and the man who, henceforth, I'm going to refer to him as Balin's host. Because that's how the narrative describes it.
Yes.
This guy doesn't have a name. He's just Balin's host. So Balin the damsel and Balin's host, they journey for 15 days. They arrived the day the feast started.
Man, not even a little bit of a break.
So they stable their horses, they go into the castle, which I'm guessing this castle is in the land of Listenes.
Yeah, you would assume.
That's where they traveled to. So Balin's new friend was denied entry to the castle because he didn't have a wife or lover. Balin, though, he had the damsel with him.
Right.
So he was given a warm reception. He was taken into a chamber and unarmed, which in this context I think means they disrobed him. And then they gave him comfy robes and asked him to leave his sword with them. And Balin was like, nay, for it is the custom of my country that a knight always keeps his weapon with him. And that custom I will keep, or else I will depart as I came.
Fair.
Castle servants didn't argue with him.
I mean, you don't argue with a guy with a sword.
Nah.
When you don't have one.
Nah.
Like,
Castle servants don't have a sword. They're not knights.
Nope.
Nope.
And even if the knight's wrong, the other knights are generally going to say, hey, stupid castle servant, listen to that knight.
That knight knows better than you. He's a knight.
That's right.
So Balin, he goes to congregate with the damsel and the other knights. While he's congregating, he, pretty shortly, he asks around asking about Sir Garland. And then one night, when he asks about Sir Garland, points Sir Garland out. Points him out. He goes, he is the most impressive knight that lives, for he destroys many good knights invisibly. Just straight up, just like, hey, that's him. He's really cool.
Yeah, he turns visible when he rides. He's like beats so many people. It's awesome.
And so, this is, I think, a very interesting part in the narrative. This is, like you mentioned in an earlier episode, Mallory has this habit of kind of just laying out the events, but then interspersed, there's like these interpersonal, like, character moments.
Yeah.
Right? So I love this. Balin, in this moment, after Garland's pointed out to him, he's looking at Garland, and he's considering, right? He's thinking really hard. He's thinking what he should do next, because if he kills the knight here, escape will be impossible, right? There's too many knights around. But if he does nothing, he's guaranteed encountering Garland again in the future, invisibly, where he's probably gonna die. I mean, how the fuck are you supposed to fight an invisible knight on horseback?
How do you joust an invisible guy? You don't know where to put
You
your
can't
spear.
fucking do that.
Yeah.
You can't do it.
You lose every time.
You gotta be underhanded here. There's the only way. So he's looking at Garland. Garland notices Balin staring at him. And Garland's an asshole.
Yeah, well, obviously.
He's a dick.
If not clear from the 2 murders.
So he walks up to Balin and just backhands him across the face. And he strikes him down, by doing so. And he's like, Knight, why do you stare at me like that? While Balin's on the ground. He's like, for shame! Eat your food and do what you came for. Balin.
Yeah. So in my version, it's a little bit sassier.
Yeah.
He comes over and just backhands the shit out of Balin.
Yeah.
And he says, you came here to feast, so feast, and quit looking at me. And then he tries to walk away. But
I gotcha.
it's like, I love the attitude that he shows here, where he's just like, unless you came here to fuck me, Mind your own damn business.
But so I'm picturing here, based on what my version described to me, I'm picturing like, Balin's got a little bit of blood on his lip.
Mm-hmm.
He wipes it off. He looks at Garland and he says, "Funny you say that. For this is not the first time you have treated me with disrespect, and therefore I will do what I came for." He stands up and he claved Garland's head to the shoulders. That means he split his head in half.
Yeah.
Fuck.
This is one of the reasons I think Balin is so fun at characters, because he answers the sass with sass.
Yeah.
Garrett's like, come to do what you fucking did, do what you came to do, which is feast. And Balin's like, matter of fact, you son of a bitch, I didn't come here to feast, and I will do what I came to do. Kills him.
Yeah.
And you're just like, that's right. That's the right answer.
So after he does that, he turns to the lady and he says, "Give me the truncheon with which he slew your knight." And, like I mentioned in the last episode, she's been carrying this truncheon with her since Sir Hurlu's death.
Mm-hmm. The first one that Garland had killed.
Yeah. Because she was hanging out with Sir Hurlu first,
mm-hmm.
Back then. She kept the truncheon, and Balin asks for it now, and she gives it to him. So to add insult to his death, the guy's already dead. Head in half. Balin takes this truncheon and stabs him through the body with it. And he says, "With that truncheon thou hast slain a good knight, and now it sticketh in thy body," he says to the dead man.
Yeah.
And so then
it's a good symbolic recompense.
So then Balin goes and finds his host, and he says, "Now you can fetch his blood to heal your son." And thus concludes the arc of the Invisible Knight.
That's it.
We still don't know how or why he can turn invisible.
It's not important.
It doesn't matter. He's dead now.
I have some symbolic theories.
Yeah?
Yeah. Which is more that in this sense, the castle is I guess a symbol for, I guess, the self or the soul. One of the reasons why single men are not allowed in is because they are, in a sense, incomplete.
Sure.
It takes two halves to make a whole. It's the man and the woman, the union of the two to make a complete soul. If you want to internalize that, that's the animus and the anima, the two halves of the masculine and the feminine to make the whole. So Balin has to be whole to go in there. When you encounter something of the soul outside of where it is recognized, you can't see it. That's why he's invisible anytime you see Garland outside the castle.
Wait, so because he's not with his significant other...
Well, no, because he's with the significant other every time they see Garland. He's just invisible because Garland's outside the castle. And the castle is symbolic of the soul, the self, the unconscious, whatever you want to call it.
So Garland is only visible when he's in this castle?
He's only recognizable.
Okay.
That's a good way to put it.
Okay.
So the analogy for that narratively is that he's invisible. You can't see him. But the more, I guess, literal way to say it was you wouldn't recognize him if you saw him outside the castle as him.
So if we were going to cast this as a movie, I would like Sir Garland to be John Cena.
I would like Sir Garland to be John Cena when he's outside the castle.
Uh-huh.
When he's inside the castle, just a John Cena lookalike. Like, you can tell he's not John Cena, but he looks just close enough that you're like,
enough.
It's a slight downgrade recast. Because then the meta joke is that John Cena is invisible.
You can't see him.
But in the castle, it's not John Cena.
You can't see him.
So that's why you can see him.
Anyways, Chapter 15. How Balin fought with King Pellam, and how his sword brake, and how he gat a spear, wherewith he smote the dolorous stroke. So this is it, guys. This is, in my opinion, the climax of the story.
I agree.
This is where the prophecy that we've been hearing about comes true. This is the chapter where the dolorous stroke happens. What does that mean? Well, you're going to find out. So here's where the narrative is weird, right? Because at the end of chapter 14, Balin went to his host and was like, hey, you can get your blood now.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how Balin was able to do that because his host wouldn't have been in the room.
Yeah.
His host didn't have a damsel or a paramour or anyone,
right.
with him so he could be in this room when this happens. Because in this moment, like as soon as Balin killed Garland, all the knights rose from their feast to fight Balin. So I don't know how to resolve that.
So in my version, the maiden is the one that gathered the blood.
Okay.
So I think that's how they sort of rectify that, is that Balin kills Sir Garland, stabs the spear into him. It's like, take your fucking spear back.
Fucking asshole.
And it's through the wound caused by the spear that the maiden gathers blood, and he's like, good, we're going to take that back to heal that guy's son.
That makes more sense.
Which, yeah, it ties the narrative up a little bit neater. And it's immediately as she's doing it that the king is like, hey, that's my brother you just killed.
Mm-hmm.
And so then all the other knights are like, well, we got to kill this guy now.
Yep.
And so they all start to attack.
Yep. So in my version, yeah, all these knights, they stand up, because they're appalled. They're affronted. Yeah. Like, did you really just kill someone at our feast?
In the middle of the feast?
And the King Pelham, he was there too, so he stands up. The knights, they defer to him. King Pelham, he was like, have you slain my brother? Then you shall die. And Balin was like, do it yourself.
Fair.
And Pelham's like, yes, there shall be no man to fight you but myself, for the love of my brother.
So that's how you get away from fighting the entire fucking
Pelham's
party. Pelham's like, one-on-one, bitch.
You killed my brother, I'm gonna fucking kill you.
Fair. I get you, Pelham.
So Pelham comes at Balin, swings at him with, quote, a grim weapon, unquote. So I'm personally picturing a giant broadsword.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be terrifying.
Yeah.
Insert whatever thing scares you the most. Giant axe, fucking chainsaw, whatever.
Pelham's,
the point is that the weapon was terrifying.
Pelham swung a terrifying weapon at Balin. Swung it at his head. Balin blocked it, but King Pelham, he swung with such anger, such ferociousness. Balin's sword shattered. And now he was weaponless, which I don't get how that's the case. He's the knight with two swords, guys. Where's his other sword?
Maybe he only brought one.
Where's his other sword, guys? I don't get it.
Here's my theory. He didn't bring the magical one, right? Because they tried to disarm him in the front.
Right.
And he's like, they're probably going to try to disarm me. I'm not stupid. They're going to try to take my sword away. I'm going to find a way around it. But just in case that I can't, I'm not taking the magical sword inside.
Right.
Because then they'll confiscate it.
Uh-huh.
So I'm going to take the normal sword. And if they let me keep it, great. If not, I don't lose the magic sword.
So his original sword is what broke.
That's my theory, is he went in with his ordinary sword.
Narratively, that makes sense. We'll get into it. Anyways, he was unarmed now.
Yeah.
So Balin...
Got a little stub.
So Balin proceeds to run from room to room, evading the king and looking for a weapon. Real Scooby-Doo shit.
Yeah. We're like, it's a fucking castle. There got to be another weapon somewhere.
Yeah.
This whole thing is a damn fortress.
And so cue Scooby-Doo music. He's running around. And finally he finds a lovely bedroom. And the blanket on the bed, it was golden, and in the bedroom there was a table made with, it has silver legs and a gold tabletop, and on top of the table was a marvelous spear, strangely wrought. So it was built weird. It didn't look like a normal spear, but a spear's a spear. Weapon's a weapon.
Mm-hmm. So in my version, this is described as a dusty old room. And it's not a bed as much as it's like an altar, and there's a body on it underneath like what do you call it? A shroud. And on top of the shroud is sitting this spear.
Oh my God. That makes more sense. Well, anyways, so Balin takes the spear and he strikes King Pelham with it.
One blow. Dead.
Pelham fell, and so did the castle roof, and the castle walls.
Yes.
Because as it turns out, this was a magic spear, and this was the dolorous stroke that Balin was prophesied to deliver. So yeah, most of the castle fell.
And it's not just a magic spear.
We'll get into that.
It's the most magical spear.
We'll get into that next chapter.
Yeah.
This chapter, castle falls, Balin and Pelham fall under it.
Mm-hmm.
They were trapped under the rubble for 3 days.
Mm-hmm. So when we started talking about doing this for the podcast, and I brought up I was going to be reading through fantasy stuff. We brought up Welsh myths, and you were interested in it because your middle name is Gwydion.
That's right.
And you said a teacher had given you a book called The Book of Three.
Yeah.
That has a character named Prince Gwydion in it.
That's right. And
you lost interest because Gwydion died.
That's right.
Do you remember how Gwydion died?
The castle fell!
Specifically after Taran, the main character, removed a magical sword from a tomb deep within the castle.
Oh my god!
And the entire castle fell.
Wow! Oh, that's nuts.
So there's a direct line from this story right there to the Book of Three.
Shit. Oh, well, we definitely got to read the Book of Three now. And
spoiler alert, Gwydion wasn't in the castle, so he didn't die.
Yeah, spoiler alert. Turns out Gwydion lives.
He was moved before the castle fell.
Hey, 7th grader me, you should have kept reading. Anyways.
He makes it through the whole 5-book series. He doesn't die once.
Wow. Good to know.
Yeah.
Anyways, chapter 16. How Balin was delivered by Merlin and saved a knight that would have slain himself for love. So yeah, Balin was trapped for 3 days, and Merlin saves him. Merlin be doing that.
So in the version that I got, it says that Balin and King Pelham were the only 2 survivors.
Oh my god.
Which
really?
means the maiden that he was traveling with also died.
Oh yeah, my version gets into that.
But they weren't trapped like under rubble or in the castle or anything. They were both in a dazed trance for 3 days. Lying there like in shock.
I mean, the castle did fall.
For 3 days. Yeah. Well, and King Pelham's still wounded.
Yeah.
He got stabbed with the spear.
No joke. Merlin saves Balin from the rubble. He gives Balin a horse. So it doesn't say how he saved Balin, only that, quote, Merlin came thither and took up Balin and gat him a horse. That's all it says about it.
Yeah, so in my version, he snapped him out of the trance. He woke him up and was like, hey, asshole, you gotta get out of here.
So yeah, he gives Balin a horse, because Balin's horse naturally died.
It's dead. Yeah, it's gone.
He advises Balin he should get out of the country.
Yeah.
And Balin's like, I would have my damsel. And Merlin's like, lo, which means look or behold. He's like, lo, here she lieth dead.
It's sad.
It is sad. King Pelham didn't die. He was badly wounded. The narrative goes on to say that he won't be whole until Sir Galahad heals him sometime later during the quest for the Sangreal, the Holy Grail.
Yes.
Because in that place was part of the blood of our Lord Jesus Christ that Joseph of Arimathea brought into this land, and there himself lay in that bed. The narrative also explains that the spear Balin struck King Pelham with is the same spear that Longius stabbed Jesus with during his crucifixion, and that King Pelham is a descendant of Joseph. This man struck King Pelham with the spear of destiny.
Yes.
What the fuck?
Yeah, so there's this sort of apocryphal story, which means it's not accepted biblical canon, that Joseph of Arimathea, who was a follower of Christ, had come into possession of the spear that had stabbed him and kept it as a family treasure. And he himself, never alive, made it to the British Isles, but his descendants continued to move, and they took his body with them, including the spear. And King Pelham is descendant from Joseph of Arimathea.
So that was Joseph's body in your version?
Yes. That was the body of Joseph of Arimathea.
with the Spear of Destiny, which for those of you that aren't familiar, so, Jesus was crucified. He was on there for 3 days. He died on the cross.
Yep.
To confirm he was dead, they stabbed him with a spear.
Yes,
And
in the
then-
side.
And then like blood and water came
And
out.
outflowed blood and water.
This is that spear.
Yes.
And for whatever reason, stabbing King Pelham with it made this castle collapse. And in so doing, because I'm guessing this castle is the center of these 3 countries,
Yeah.
caused a Great Depression.
Yeah. So you get into this in like the history of Arthurian legends, including other knights. Mostly it's with Percival or Parzival, or depending on what you're reading, how the name is spelled. There is a character known as the Grail King.
Okay.
He is the character that lives in the castle where the Holy Grail is.
Okay.
And he is almost always a maimed and injured king.
You're telling me he's not in a dungeon in a canyon somewhere?
He is not.
Okay.
No, there are no Nazis.
Indiana Jones, you've misled me.
You got it wrong. But what generally tends to happen is the Grail King isn't the same guy forever. Although while they are the Grail King, they are technically immortal. What will happen is someone who stumbles upon the Grail King and gets entry into the castle, meets the Grail King, and what tends to happen is they go, "Hey, King, what's wrong with you?" And by asking, you have cursed yourself to take his place. And so then they become healed, and you become injured, and you are the new Grail King.
Is Pelham the Grail King now?
That's what I'm getting, is that this is Pelham becoming the Grail King.
Oh. Interesting.
Now, supposedly Parzival, he's the perfect knight, or Galahad, depending on the version of the story, who comes and is so perfect that he can both heal the Grail King and not become injured himself. And so it like breaks the cycle. He takes the Grail and they go to heaven.
Anyways, so Balin, in this moment, he says to Merlin, "In this world we meet never no more." And he
Honestly,
departs.
with all the bullshit Merlin brings about, that's good news.
Yeah.
I'm really getting sick of being involved with Merlin's shenanigans.
Yeah, so he leaves the country, and while he's leaving the country, he sees a lot of people dead during his travels.
And they curse him.
Yes, they say, and I got a quote here, "You have caused great damage in these countries. For the dolorous stroke you gave to King Pelham, 3 countries are destroyed. Have no doubt vengeance will fall upon you." Needless to say, Balin was delighted to get out of there.
Yeah, I'm not sticking around.
so he traveled on that way for about a week before he came across a nice forest in a valley. In the valley was a tower, and beside the tower was a knight and a great war horse tied to a tree.
Mm-hmm.
So the knight was crying. Or mourning is what it says. I interpret that as crying.
Yeah.
He's sad and he's fussing
Visibly
about
upset.
it. Visibly upset about it. And so Balin asks the knight, "Hey, what's going on? Do you need help?" The knight says to him, "You do me great grief. I was in merry thoughts, and now you put me in more pain." Balin doesn't understand what that means. So he steps back and, he looks at the guy's war horse, and it's very impressive. Because of the way they describe it, I imagine it like to be a giant armored horse.
Yeah.
So then the knight says, "Ah, fair lady, why have you broken your promise? You promised to meet me here by noon. I curse you for ever giving me this sword, for with this sword I slay myself." The knight draws his sword. Balin's been through this once before.
Mm-hmm.
He's not doing this shit again. He moves quickly, he grabs the man by the hand. And the knight's like, "Let go of my hand or else I'll kill you." And Balin's like, "There's no need for that. For I promise you my help to get you your lady, and you shall tell me where she is." And the knight is like, "What is your name?" And Balin says, "Balin le Savage." And the knight says, "Ah, sir, I know you well enough. You are the knight with the 2 swords. And Balin's like, "What's your name?" And this guy's like, "My name is Garnish of the Mount. A poor man's son, but by my prowess and hardiness, a duke has made me knight and given me lands. His name is Duke Hermel, and I love his daughter, and she me, I think." that I think is important.
Very uncertain there.
Yeah. And so Balin's like, how far is she hence? With hence meaning from this place. So, how far is she from here?
Right.
Garnish is like 6 miles. Now ride we hence, the 2 knights say. Again, I imagine in unison because of the way they describe it. I imagine they're both just like, and now
it's this very
ride.
campy moment. And now we hence.
We hence ride. They ride to the castle.
Cue travel montage.
Yeah. Cue travel montage of 6 miles where they go to this castle that Sir Garnish was talking about. It's described as a fair castle, well-walled and ditched, which...
Well protected.
I get, yeah.
Fortified.
It's got a nice
stuff.
moat,
Yeah,
but,
good
there's
moat,
no water in it.
Good walls.
Yeah. And so Balin's like, I'll go in and look for her. And so he goes in, he searches chamber after chamber after chamber, and eventually he finds a, quote, a fair little garden, and under a laurel tree he saw her, unquote. She was lying on a quilt of green samite, which is, I looked it up, it's like a very fancy, well-designed, like, silk quilt. This one was green, and it had, like, gold filigree.
Yeah, it's very expensive fabric.
Oh, yeah. And so she's sleeping under this laurel tree, and in her arms is another knight.
Bum, bum, bum.
And they're in this sleeping embrace under the tree. So Balin sees this, and he judges that man as the foulest knight he had ever seen, and her supposedly a fair lady. So Balin's
I love
like,
the judgment. He's just like, ugh, you both are awful. Yeah. Well, because his friend is outside, and he's like,
his
you're
new
break,
friend
you're
who
gonna
he
break
just
my
met.
friend's heart.
Like, he didn't even know what's going on.
No.
So Balin exits the castle, and he tells Sir Garnish what's up. Brings him into the castle. And that's how the chapter ends.
Yeah. I love the cliffhangers here.
Yeah.
Thomas Mallory's like, I'm going to keep you wanting to read some more.
Right?
Because I'm like, what happens when they come in the castle?
What happens next?
I want to know.
Chapter 17. How that knight slew his love, and a knight lying by her. And after, how he slew himself with his own sword, and how Balin rode toward a castle where he lost his life. So as you may have gleaned from that little chapter blurb, this doesn't go well.
This is it.
Sir Garnish sees what Balin saw in the last chapter, and he is so upset. He begins bleeding from his nose and mouth. It's like an anime.
That's, you gotta, well, yeah, but he's not horny.
He's not horny.
That's
He's
an
sad.
anime, that's the horny
You're
symbol.
right. You're right. I'm misattributing
It's the
the
Master
trope.
Roshi.
But that is what I thought of. Like,
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, you're that upset?
Oh, man.
He draws his sword.
Mm-hmm.
He cuts off the man and the woman's head.
Yeah.
While they're sleeping, just cuts their heads off.
Now, in my version, it says with a single stroke.
I don't remember what my
with
version said.
one stroke gets both of them. Which I think is meant to imply that's how close they were.
Yeah, I mean, they were in this
Right.
close,
So it's not,
cuddled embrace.
They don't want you to get confused that, like, this woman is coerced there somehow, or that it's a platonic. Like, no, they're together.
Yeah. So Garnish does this, and then he starts crying. And he's like, oh, Balin, you've brought me so much sorrow by showing me this. If you hadn't shown me, my sorrow might have passed. Interesting that Sir Garnish is blaming Balin for his own actions.
Well, see, what I find interesting is in the beginning of the story, a woman blames Balin for her lover's death.
Yeah.
And then kills herself, and Balin didn't stop her.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at the end of the story, a man who doesn't kill himself, Balin stops him from killing himself.
Yeah.
And then he still blames Balin and still kills himself.
Can't win for trying.
That's right. He's like, no, I've learned, and it didn't make a difference.
Didn't make a fucking difference. So this guy's like, you shouldn't have shown me this. You shouldn't have shown me this. And Balin's like, I showed you intending to better your courage so you would know this woman's falsehood and abandon your love for her. God knows I would have you done the same for me.
Yeah, well, and so, I mean, I get Balin's argument here. He's like, you're in love with this woman. She clearly doesn't love you.
Clearly.
So I'm going to show you, look, you're wasting your time. She's not that into you. Just move on.
He didn't have to show him.
Well, no, he could have just told him. But I would think that guy probably wouldn't believe him. He'd be like, you're a liar. You're trying to keep her for yourself. Mm-hmm. And then it would have ended up more or less the same. But it's just, and Balin's saying like, look, if I were in love with a woman that didn't love me, I'd want you to tell me. That's a fair argument.
Well, Garnish is like, alas, now my sorrow is doubled, and I may not endure it, for I have slain she who I loved most in all my life.
Yeah.
And so then Sir Garnish kills himself on his sword.
Now, I think it's important to notice that's 100% his fault.
Yeah.
Because he's really killing himself because he regrets killing her.
Uh-huh.
And Balin didn't make him do that. That's on him.
Didn't try to stop him again.
Well, I don't know that you could have.
I don't know. But then this next bit struck me as hilarious. Balin adjusted Garnish's body so folks wouldn't believe that he killed all three of them. And then he bounced.
That's important.
It is.
One, because he's already been imprisoned once for killing somebody. And two, he didn't kill all three. He didn't kill any of those.
It's true.
So it's very important for him. It's like, everybody needs to know.
I didn't do it.
This wasn't me.
Wasn't me.
Man. But then just fucking leave. Doesn't tell anybody. It's just like, I gotta get out of here.
He left.
Oh, Balin.
Hi, this is Functionally Literate. Hope you've been enjoying listening. This episode is brought to you by me. I made this show. I'm Ryan. I'm broke. If you could donate a little money my way with a sponsorship or a product, like, I'll be a shill for money. And I'm going to use that money with which to buy books. Because let me tell you, right now I'm checking stuff out of the library and it's rough. You can email me at funk.lit.pod@gmail.com. That is FUNC.LIT.POD@gmail.com. You could also be a patron of this podcast. That's right. This podcast, Functionally Literate, we're going places. We have a Patreon now. You can give me $1, and in exchange, you will be able to listen to this podcast ad-free. That means right now, you don't have to listen to this bit. You can listen to the podcast uninterrupted. It just goes without me going on about things that you don't care about. Just for $1. And that will increase in value every 2 weeks because there will be another ad-free episode. Additionally, if you'd like to just pitch a little money my way, like you're not interested in being a patron, you can go to my PayPal, which is also in there. I made a Funklit PayPal. It'll all be in the description. Links, all the links in the description. So 3 days later, he's traveling again.
Yeah.
3 days later, he found a cross near the path he was traveling along. Written on the cross in gold letters, it's got to be Merlin again.
Merlin again.
He's like, the cross says, "It is not for no knight alone to ride toward this castle." And then an old gray-haired man approaches him and says, "Balin le Savage, thou passest thy bounds to come this way. Therefore turn again, and it will avail thee." And then he vanished. So Merlin. That guy's Merlin.
That's Merlin. And he's saying, "Turn back."
Yeah. And then he hears a horn blow, much like one would hear a hunter blow after killing an animal. Mm-hmm. And he's like, "That blast." He's saying this to himself.
Yeah.
He's like, "That blast is blown for me. For I am the prize, and yet I am not dead."
So there's a Welsh legend
Mm-hmm.
that just before you die, you will hear a hunting horn.
Interesting.
And so that's sort of playing on that, where he hears the horn and he's going, "It's my time."
I was wondering what the significance of it was.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's similar. It's the hunt. It's to signify that you are the prey of the hunt and you are doomed. Like, you're not dead, but you may as well be. There's no escaping at this point. So if you heard the horn, then you know your time has come.
So shortly after this, he saw 100 ladies and a lot of, though unenumerated amount of knights with these 100 ladies. And they welcomed him cheerfully. They led him into a castle where there was music and dancing, much joy all around. The chief lady, that's how they refer to her in the narrative, the chief lady of the castle went to Balin and said, "Knight with the 2 swords, ye must have ado and joust with a knight hereby that keepeth an island, for there may no man pass this way, but he must joust or he pass." And Balin's like, "Well, that's an unhappy custom, that a knight may not pass this way unless he jousts." And the lady says, "Ye shall not have ado but with 1 knight." And he's like, "Well, since I shall thereto, I am ready, but traveling men are oft weary, and their horses too. But though my horse be weary, my heart is not weary. I should be fain, there my death should be. Or, no, I would be fain, there my death should be." So I'm not quite sure what he's saying here.
I don't know what feign.
I feel like it's like he's saying he's accepting his death.
If I had to guess, what I'm saying is like, look, my horse is tired, but I'm not tired. I can go fight.
Yeah.
And if I die, I die.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever.
At
this point, I really don't think he's got that much will to live. He's ruined 3 kingdoms. He's responsible for 3 people's death recently, several people's death prior.
That's an interesting point. I hadn't considered that. Probably. That would make sense. I mean, I'd be pretty downtrodden at this point.
Yeah. And then they're like, "You can't go through unless you fight somebody." He's like, "You know what? Fucking whatever.
Whatever,
fine. If I die, I die."
So yeah, then one of the knights says to Balin, "Sir, methinketh your shield is not good. I will lend you a bigger one." And so Balin takes the shield that was offered to him, and he rides towards the island. And he and his horse, they board a large boat. And when he arrives on the island, he's met by another damsel, who says, "O Knight Balin, why have you left your own shield? Alas, you have put yourself in great danger, for by your shield you would have been known. It is great pity of you, as ever was of knight, for of thy prowess and hardiness thou has no fellow living." So she's like, "Dude, people recognize that shield.
Yeah.
You need to have that shield. You're the knight with 2 swords.
Yeah, you're famous. Everybody knows that."
And so Balin's like, "Me repenteth that ever I came within this country, but I may not turn now again for shame. And what adventure shall fall to me, be it life or death, I will take the adventure that shall come to me." So like you said, he's...
Yeah. Well, and he's also saying, he's like, "Wow, I mean, I could turn back and get my shield, but then I'll look like a coward." Because they're going to be like, "Oh, he ran away."
Yeah.
So he's like, "Well, fuck it."
So then he, he looks at himself, he looks at his armor, he looks at his horse, who's also well armed, and he knew that he was ready, and he mounts his horse. And that's the end of the chapter. We're nearing the end, guys. Chapter 18. How Balin met with his brother Balin, and how each of them slew other unknown, till they were wounded to death. So,
Balin's ready.
Balin's ready.
We're going to mount up. We're going to go joust this knight of the island.
A horse and rider in matching red armor. So both this knight and this rider.
That's pretty badass.
They were in matching red armor. Looks pretty cool.
That's pretty sweet.
He rides out of the castle on the island. This knight was Balin's younger brother, Balin. The younger brother saw his older brother with 2 swords, and for a moment he was like, "Is that my brother? Nah, probably not. That's not his shield."
Yeah, that's not his coat of arms.
So they ready their spears, they rush at each other, they struck each other in their shields with such strength that they knocked each other down, and both their horses, they knocked the wind out of each other on the first strike.
They're so good. Both of them, so good.
They were just like, ugh. So the older brother was bruised by this. The younger brother wasn't. The younger brother, he was the first to rise. The Red Knight.
Yes.
The Red Knight, he stands up, he draws his sword, he rushes Balin. Balin was able to rise in time to block with his shield. But the Red Knight struck through Balin's shield and then dented his helmet.
Very uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. So then Balin strikes the Red Knight with his sword, knocking the Red Knight down. And they fight like that until they were out of breath. So, have you ever played For Honor?
I have not.
So, are you familiar with it?
Yes.
It's a very fun fighting game, a martial fighting game. Mm-hmm. In that game, there's a mechanic, stamina.
Yeah.
Great little green bar under your health. When you run out of stamina, you don't want to run out of stamina in a fight.
Yeah.
And so what you learn when you get good at the game in For Honor is you really want to stop swinging that sword eventually so you can catch your breath. Well, my point being is these guys are amateurs. Why are you swinging until you run out of breath? Back up. Reassess.
I think that it might be more a description of just how long
the fight
was.
Yeah.
Because even if you are really pacing yourself, you're an experienced warrior. I mean, these guys have been through war. They beat King Rience all on their own.
They did.
And I mean, it's constantly mentioned that Balin is this matchless knight. He's the greatest knight.
Mm-hmm.
No one's his equal, except maybe his brother. So when they say that, they fought until they were just exhausted and out of breath, I'm not thinking like, they blew their load in 5 minutes. I'm thinking like, this shit's been all afternoon.
Sure.
They've been there for hours. Eventually, you're going to get tired.
It does keep going. So they run out of breath.
Mm-hmm.
Based on how the narrative talks about this, it's my belief that the fight, it might have stopped there. But the problem was that there was a castle nearby. And so Balin, when he's out of breath, he looks up and he sees in the castle towers, he sees all of these ladies watching them fight. Masculinity dictated that battle had to keep going.
You need a clear
winner. He had to
winner.
win. He had to impress those ladies. So they keep fighting.
Yeah.
And they run out of breath again. And then, they recover their stamina and they fight again. They fought so long and so ferociously, they stained the ground just red with their blood. They each dealt 7 great wounds to each other. And the narrative states that these wounds are so great that the least of them, so the smallest wound would have been the death of the mightiest giant in this world.
Yeah, these guys are fucking each other
up. They're fucking each other up and they're still going. It just keeps going until
that is how powerful the masculine motivation to impress women is. You're about to die? There's a cute girl looking. Nah, I'm good, bro. I'm good. Didn't even feel it. Let's go.
Yeah, so they keep fighting until their chainmail is broken. Like their torsos are unarmored at this point. All they've got are like bracers and maybe their leggings.
See, this is one of those moments that's like you get this hunky shot of like 2 fucking beefcakes just glistening with sweat and hair.
This is
every mom is like, I like this.
This is the moment in the theater when all the women watching are like, all right, you know what?
Yeah, one of them's Henry Cavill.
Yes.
Has to be.
Is Henry Cavill Balin or Balin?
I imagine Balin. He's the younger.
He's the
younger brother.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they're unarmored at this point, right? And so finally, Balin, the knight in red, the knight who was on this island, he draws back. He lies down. Balin is like, "Who are you? I've never fought a knight that could match me in battle." And he says, "My name is Balin, brother of the good knight Balin." And Balin's like, "Alas, I hoped never to see this day." And he faints. Balin crawls to his brother on all fours, takes off his helmet. He couldn't recognize him by face because he was so battered and bloody. They'd been fighting for so long.
Yeah.
And he, as I mentioned earlier, damaged his helmet. Balin eventually wakes up, and he says, "We have killed one another. The whole wide world shall speak of us." And Balin is like, "I thought it might have been you. I saw your 2 swords, but you had another shield, so I believed you were someone else." And Balin is like, "Alas, all that made an unhappy knight in the castle, for he caused me to leave my own shield to our both's destruction. And if I might live, I would destroy that castle for ill custom." So he's just like, damn that knight.
Yeah.
Damn
and
that knight.
Stupid rules. I hate you.
Balin says, "That were well done, for I had never grace to depart them since that I came hither. For here it happed me to slay a knight that kept this island, and since might I never depart, and no more should ye, brother. And ye might have slain me as ye have, and escaped yourself with the life." So he was saying, like, I killed the last knight that was guarding the island, and so I have to stay here.
Yeah.
You know, if only you could have killed me so you could have lived.
Mm-hmm.
The lady of the tower comes out with her entourage, and she overhears some of the conversation the brothers are having. You know, they're confused. Why'd the fighting stop?
Yeah.
Balin, begs of the lady to bury them in one tomb, as they had been birthed from one tomb. That is, their mother's womb.
Mm-hmm.
The lady weeps and says it would be done. The brothers ask for a priest to give them sacrament and bless their bodies.
Yeah.
The lady said this would be done. And then Balin is like, "Now, when we are buried in one tomb, and people hear how we died, none will see our tomb, but they will pray for our souls." The lady of the tower and her entourage, they weep. Balin dies. Balin dies a day later at midnight.
Mm-hmm.
The lady buried them in the same tomb and mentions how Balin's brother had killed him, but didn't know his name, which I'm confused about this. She couldn't have asked. He lived for another 36 hours.
Nobody thought to
ask?
do that, I guess.
Hey, what's your name, man?
Mm-hmm. Maybe he wasn't conscious. Maybe he
right.
was alive, but
Probably
he couldn't
fell into a
speak.
coma.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I would.
I would.
I'm taking that coma.
7 great wounds, coma.
Give me a coma.
Chapter 19. How Merlin buried them both in one tomb, and of Balin's sword. So this is the last chapter. This is, if ever there were an epilogue, this is it.
Yeah.
So, Balin's dead. Merlin, as always, shows up at the end. He writes on their tomb, "Here lieth Balin le Savage, that was the knight with the 2 swords, and he that smote the dolorous stroke." Quotation marks. I'm quoting this. "Also Merlin let make there a bed, that there should never man lie therein, but he went out of his wit. Yet Lancelot de Lake fordid," which I looked that up, fordid means destroyed, "that bed through his noblesse," which means through his noble birth.
Mm-hmm.
I don't get what this means.
My understanding is Merlin made this crazy enchanted bed.
Yeah.
That if anyone lay in it, it would kill them. Except Lancelot was just so noble and righteous that when he laid in it, he destroyed the bed.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Doesn't explain why. Doesn't make sense. Just setting something up for a future story.
We're just gonna talk about how fucking awesome Lancelot is real quick.
So now that the brothers were both dead, Merlin took Balin's sword. He removes the pommel of the sword and replaces it with a new one.
Mm-hmm.
And then he asks a knight on the island to hold the sword. The knight attempted to and couldn't. And Merlin laughs at this. And the knight's like, "Why are you laughing?" And Merlin's like, "This is why. There shall never be a man to handle this sword again, except for the best knight in the world, and that shall be Sir Lancelot or Sir Galahad, his son. With this sword, Lancelot shall kill the man that he loves most in the world, and that will be Sir Gawain." Can you imagine being that knight?
You're like, why the fuck are you even telling me this, dude? I don't know who any of these people are. Who are you? Just this kooky old man handed me a sword that's got all buttery handle, and I just can't get a grip on it. And he's like, ha ha ha, fuck you. Such a weird interaction.
Yeah, I don't know.
But that's just how Merlin be sometimes.
That is how Merlin be. So yeah, so he writes on the new pommel of the sword the information that he tells this knight.
Yeah.
I'm guessing in really teeny tiny gold lettering.
I think it's interesting that Merlin says that the man Lancelot loves most is Gawain. Because I would have understood it to be King Arthur. I would have thought that's who Lancelot loved the most.
Would he really love King Arthur the most when he's boning down on Arthur's wife?
Yeah, well, it gets a little weird because the whole thing is like Arthur knew that was happening.
He did?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
But the thing is, his marriage to Guinevere is what you would call noble love.
Sure.
Not romantic love.
Sure.
So he's like, I love her in that I respect her as a lady of nobility. She's a good queen, and she's a good person, and she makes me a better king, and that's good. But she understands, or he understands, that there's no like eroticism between them.
Interesting.
Whereas she is romantically in love with Lancelot, and Lancelot romantically in love with Guinevere. But Lancelot also has a noble love for Arthur. Arthur's sort of the ideal that Lancelot strives to. Well, and that's sort of the character growth of Lancelot, is being like, how do I reconcile that the husband is the ideal, but I lust after the wife?
Right.
And having to deal with those two parts of his character.
Well, we get into that in a much later story.
Yeah.
In the meanwhile, Merlin be writing down his prophecies.
Yeah, I'm just not sure where the Gawain part comes in.
Yeah, I don't know. But, so then with his magic, Merlin makes a bridge of iron and steel connecting the mainland to this island. The bridge was 1/2 foot wide, and no one would cross or go over that bridge unless he was a good man and a good knight and had no treachery or villainy in his heart. So then Merlin leaves the scabbard of Balin's sword on the island for Galahad to find later. And he puts the sword itself in a marble stone that... So this stone was enchanted to always float above the water, with the sword being upright. Yeah. It was, it wouldn't be impossible otherwise. It was enchanted to do this. And so, this sword's just floating in a stone in the water. Floats down the stream. Like, it's floating in the water for years before eventually going down the stream. It finds its way to Camelot, which, for some reason in the narrative, it chooses at this moment to specify that Camelot's modern-day Winchester. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
So the sword arrives in Camelot. The day it arrived in Camelot was the same day Galahad arrived with King Arthur with the scabbard that I mentioned just now, and obtained the sword. This story is told about later in the Book of Sangreal.
Yes.
So soon after Merlin did his deeds on the island, he goes to Arthur and tells him how Balin delivered the dolorous stroke to King Pellam, and how he had fought the most impressive battle ever heard of versus his brother, and how they were both buried in the same tomb. Merlin tells Arthur that, and Arthur's like, alas, this is the greatest pity that I ever heard told of two knights. For in the world I know none other like them. Thus endeth the tale of Balin and Balin, two brethren born in Northumberland, good knights. That's what the narrative says. I don't know about the good part.
Well, I mean, it's just a qualitative word. It's modifying the word knights. They were very successful men of arms.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in the strictest sense, it's true.
Fair enough. So that was that story. Pretty nuts, right?
What a wild fucking ending.
I know.
But it feels good. Like, at the end, I'm like, that's how that should have ended.
Yeah.
It just feels right. You're like, yep, it had to have been his brother.
So now we've got one final section to this episode, guys. So, fun fact, I've been slowly reading this story at work, because, the nature of my job allows me to read from time to time and taking notes on it. And I've just like, over the past month, I've been telling my wife, Cara, about this story. And just at every turn, she's just appalled. She fucking hates Balin.
By what? What could possibly be upsetting?
And she asked me, can I can I come in at the end? Can I talk about this? And I said, yeah, sure, go ahead. So I'm gonna step out, and my wife Cara is gonna impart her thoughts.
Hey there. This is Cara Carter, Ryan's wife.
Hey, Carl.
Hi, Zach.
How's it going?
Oh, it's going.
I heard you had some comments about old Balin,
Oh no,
Knight
just,
of the Two
just
Swords.
a moral. What's the moral of the story here, friends? The moral of the story is men ain't shit. That's the moral of the story. So, taking it back, Ryan has not told me all of these stories, but, you know, just one was enough for me to realize what the underlying problem here is. So the Lady of the Lake is like, hey, Arthur, buddy, I'm under your protection. Give me that guy's head. And Arthur, being an idiot, was like, but no, I don't want to do that. Even though he promised her. So first of all, we have a king who's going back on his word. And then Balin comes in and cuts the Lady of the Lake's head off when she's under Arthur's protection. This man is a menace. He should have been punished immediately by Arthur. As soon as that happened, Arthur should have been like, bro, dude, she was under my protection. Why are you doing that shit? Instead, he's like, oh no, the Lady of the Lake, it's broken. How sad. And Balin gets to go on his merry way. He immediately kills another knight. And that knight's lover kills herself. He has now caused the death of a man and the death of 2 women. This man needs to be locked away in an insane asylum or something. He needs to be put away.
Small correction. It's already 2 men. He was initially imprisoned at the beginning of this story for killing, intentionally or not, Arthur's cousin.
So why was
it's 2 men and 2 women. I will say, there's some
Oh.
drama between Balin and the Lady of the Lake, all right? So, like, she says, oh, the lady that came with the sword is this horrible woman, and I gave her that sword because she's a bitch and I wanted to punish her for some stuff. And then Balin's like, yeah, well, I took the sword, now I'm cursed because I have the sword. And the Lady of the Lake's like, I'll take either Balin's head or the lady. And Arthur's like, nah, I'm a Christian, thou shalt not murder, can't be doing that nonsense, but ask anything else. And she's like, that's what I want. And then Balin cuts her head off, and Arthur's like, that's fucked up, bro. Like, she was under my protection, you ain't supposed to do that. So he exiles Balin. So there is a punishment. Now, it doesn't really fit the crime, I'll admit, but there's a punishment.
Okay, Ryan didn't mention that part.
The justification Balin has is that the Lady of the Lake is responsible for Balin's mother being dead. It doesn't really go into too many details why. It just says it is her fault that my mother was burned to death. So we don't know why. But the Lady of the Lake also says, yeah, but Balin killed my brother.
So
they're
Balin
both
is a menace.
So they're both fucking terrible. It sounds
They're
like.
both terrible. So, okay, they're both terrible.
Yeah.
However, Balin continues to be terrible.
Yes, he keeps going. He keeps
and
going.
it's after, like, I believe it's after the lady kills herself, after he kills that knight, that he's like, maybe I should treat women better. And it's like, you think?
Yeah, so then this
Wow.
other knight, who's a knight in Arthur's court, after Balin is exiled and he leaves, he goes, hey, King Arthur, I can go avenge the wrong done to you on Balin. I'll go do that. And Arthur's like, yeah, go ahead. So he chases him down and he's like, Balin, fuck you, I'm going to kill you. And Balin's like, why? And he goes, because I'm from King Arthur's court and get fucked, bro. And so Balin's like, well, okay. And so they joust and Balin wins. And that's when the woman comes up and is like, you have slain 2 hearts in one body, 2 hearts. And then Balin chooses not to try to stop her from killing herself because he's afraid he'll hurt her in the process, which Ryan and I talked about a little bit. Not really sure how you balance those 2 things. It's like, I don't know, if a woman's got a gun to her head, do I punch her in the face to stop her? Is that okay?
Is that okay?
I don't know, because some people are going to be like, you should never hit a woman. I was like, well, she was going to shoot herself. Do I punch her to stop her?
I mean, I think a tackle to stop.
Well, yeah, I'm being exaggerative.
You know?
The punch isn't going to stop her from shooting herself.
Yeah, like
But
I think that in that situation
is the temporary
it's
harm
understandable.
justified?
I think it's understandable at that point. what gets me is that he's like, I should treat women better. And then he goes to this castle. I'm aware that some things were skipped, but he goes to this castle and he uses the spear and it brings down the entire castle. And yeah, I understand his life was in danger at that point. But how many servants were in that castle? How many women were in that castle?
Well, here's the funny part. There were more women in that castle than naturally would have been. Because the nature of the feast was for knights with spouses. So every man in that castle had a woman with him.
So Balin's committed a war crime.
Yeah, no. Three kingdoms were in utter disarray.
Balin
presumably
needs to be
because the entire
sanctioned.
ruling class of all of these countries just died. Because Balin thought it'd be fun to pick up the Spear of Destiny.
Fucking Balin.
Yeah, Balin's
this man needs to be stopped, and he was stopped.
He was.
And you know
He was
what?
stopped.
I think that King Arthur's England and the world of King Arthur is better for it. Because, oh my god, he's committed several war crimes. Several at this point. He needs to be sanctioned by the Geneva Conventions. I honestly think that if you told the Geneva Conventions to Balin, he'd be like more like Geneva Suggestions. And just move on with
He'd be
his
like,
life.
Geneva, have I killed her yet?
Have I killed that one?
Is she killed herself now? Was that
Did
the
I
one?
kill her husband?
I actually never got her name, so maybe it was Geneva.
Maybe. But you know what? The moral of the story is
Balin.
men ain't shit, particularly Arthur and Balin, because Arthur was like, oh no, you did the killing. I guess you have to go away now. Instead of, I don't know, an actual punishment that would have ensured Balin couldn't hurt anybody else.
I don't remember now, but did anything happen to the noble woman that brought the sword to King Arthur's court? I know she left, but did that ever get revisited?
She left and
Good for her.
slandered her name.
Yeah. I was like,
Fucking
she
Merlin.
just showed up, said, here's this magic sword. There you go, Balin. Give it back or you're cursed. He goes, no. And she goes, fine. And she just leaves, and then everything goes to shit. And then
warning.
And then Merlin comes in and goes, oh, that lady that brought the sword? She just came to stir shit. She's a bitch. She's actually she's the worst fucking woman ever. She absolutely just went and begged for this magic sword to cause a bunch of problems. Fuck that lady.
Well, knowing what I know about Merlin, you know, I don't take his word very seriously.
No, he's the son of a devil. He's a dream reader. He's a witch.
He's a witch.
He's a witch. Burn
It's
him.
funny you say that because we're getting ready. I'm directing the Crucible. This was first week of rehearsals and Ryan's in it. And for those of you who don't know, Crucible's all about witch hunts. And so
they're all witches.
We've been making jokes, and we were talking about what could get you identified as a witch in the period of witch hunting, which was like from mid 1400s to the early 1700s. Oh boy.
I just really liked it at some
a woman?
point in the first book of Arthur. A guy insults Merlin by calling him a dream reader. He's like, you dream read, like it's this derogatory term.
Like, that's the funniest. That is
really
like
funny.
the sickest shit ever.
Like, you just showed me, go, I had this weird dream, and here's what I thought. And everyone else goes, the fuck did you just say?
The fuck did you just say? Is
Get
that
the
a
pitch.
witch?
Get the pitch. We got some burning to do.
I have a question. Do you, are you a woman? Do you talk to yourself? Witch. Do you weigh less or more than a stack of Bibles? Witch.
Less or more. You have to weigh the exact
amount.
The exact amount
of a stack of Bibles.
I'd be ripping pages out.
Well,
how many
the thing
pages are in it? What's that way? Turn into a Protestant real quick. We're taking out Song of Songs. We don't need that.
We don't need
Or if you're a heavier set woman, you're like, oh, well, let's count the apocryphals, all right?
Let's count the apocryphals.
Gospel of Thomas, we're gonna throw that in there. Gonna make that a little
thing
heavier,
is,
that stack of Bibles.
It depended on the town. The
Oh,
town
my-
got to
yes.
choose
we're
how many
a
Bibles.
yeah.
They were like, is it less or more? Wait, what's she weighing?
It's obviously 12.
You're a witch!
It's gotta be 12 Bibles.
It's gotta be 12. Only in this town, though.
Can't do 13, though.
Can't do 13.
You want to go higher, you gotta go to 14. 13, that's a witch number.
That's a witch.
Can't do that.
A witch! Ryan's over there telling us to wrap it up.
We need to shut up. Okay,
so the moral of the story is, men ain't shit, Arthur ain't shit, and it's probably for the best that Balin died because he committed several war crimes, and, just basic crimes against humanity, society, and women in particular. And he never learned his lesson. Not a damn time.
And that one dwarf, hey, thanks, man. Thanks for standing up for women.
Thanks for standing up for
thanks,
women,
dwarf. Going, hey, Balin, you're a little out of control here. All right, that's the end of the episode. Thanks, VidWest, for the space. Thanks, Chris, the sound guy, and Digistory for producing everything. Thanks, Ryan. Thanks, Cara. Thanks, I guess, Thomas Mallory. That feels inappropriate.
Thomas Mallory is dead, and he can't tell me what to do.
Well, he was probably a garbage human.
Yeah.
That's it for today. Hopefully we're all a little more functioning with it. Bye, guys.
Bye.